You have already lived an entire life that you will never remember. You were born. You opened your eyes for the first time in your life. You heard your mother's voice before you knew what a voice was. You felt cold air on your skin for the first time. You cried. You laughed. You learned to recognize the face that kept appearing above you. You lived it all, fully, intensely, completely, and then you forgot every single second of it. Most people assume they know why. Your brain was too small, you were too young, the hardware wasn't ready yet. But that's not what happened. And the real answer is so much stranger than a simple explanation about being too young to remember. Because your baby brain wasn't failing to record your life. It was recording everything. The memories were there. Something destroyed them, and understanding what destroyed them will change the way you think about memory, identity, and who you actually are. Let's start with the assumption everyone makes. Babies can't form memories because their brains aren't developed enough. It sounds logical. It feels right. It's wrong. In the 1980s, psychologist Carolyn Rovi Collier at Rutgers University ran a deceptively simple experiment. She tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a colorful mobile hanging above the crib. The babies learned almost immediately that kicking their leg made the mobile move. They loved it. When she brought the same babies back days later, some as young as 2 months old, they remembered. They started kicking the moment they saw the mobile. No reminder, no warm-up, just instant recall. Think about that for a second. 2-month-old babies forming memories, recalling them days later without any prompting. The brain was working, the hardware was there. 6-month-old babies in the same experiment held those memories for weeks. So the question isn't whether you could form memories as a baby. You could. The question is what happened to them. In 2014, 2 neuroscientists in Toronto made a discovery that rewrote everything we thought we knew about infant memory. Sheena Jocelyn and Paul Franklin at the Hospital for Sick Children proposed something that sounded almost absurd when they first put it forward. What if the very process that builds your brain is also what destroys your memories? Here's what they meant. In the first years of life, your hippocampus, in the part of your brain that turns lived experiences into retrievable memories, is producing new neurons at an extraordinary rate. This is called neurogenesis, and it's essential. Those new brain cells are building the circuits you'll use for the rest of your life. But every time a new neuron integrates into an existing circuit, it disrupts the connections that were already there, the connections that were holding your memories. To test this, Jocelyn and Franklin artificially increased neurogenesis in adult mice. Those mice started forgetting things they had already learned. When they slowed neurogenesis in infant mice, those infants held on to memories significantly longer than normal. The results were published in the journal Science, and the conclusion was counterintuitive and devastating. Your baby brain wasn't too weak to hold memories, it was too busy building itself. The explosion of new neurons that constructed your mind also erased the experiences stored inside it. Your earliest years weren't lost because they were never saved. They were lost because your brain kept building new rooms and tearing down the old walls to do it. You weren't forgotten. You were overwritten. But there's another layer, and this one is the strangest part of all. To form what scientists call autobiographical memory, the kind where you are the main character, where you can close your eyes and replay a moment that happened to you, you need something most of us take completely for granted. You need a sense of self. You need to understand that you exist as a person, separate from everything around you, and that things are happening specifically to you. Developmental psychologists Mark Howe and Mary Courage argued in the late 1990s that this is the critical missing piece. Before roughly 18 to 24 months of age, infants don't recognize themselves as distinct individuals. Scientists test this with what they call the mirror test. Put a small dot of rouge on a baby's nose and place them in front of a mirror. Before 18 months, babies reach toward the glass or toward the other baby they see there. After 18 months, they reach for their own face. They understand that the reflection is them. And that moment, the birth of self-recognition, tracks almost exactly with the earliest age at which lasting autobiographical memories can form. In other words, you can't remember being a baby partly because there was no you yet, not in the way you experience yourself now. There was no narrator inside your head packaging experiences into a story that belonged to a person called you. There were sensations, there were emotions, There were moments of intense experience, but there was no one home to own them. So who was living your life in those first 2 years? There is one final piece, and once you understand it, you will never look at the way adults talk to children the same way again. Psychologist Catherine Nelson spent decades on this. Her conclusion was stark. Language doesn't just describe our memories, it structures them. Before you could speak, your experiences were raw sensory impressions, sounds, textures, light, hunger, warmth. Without words to organize them, those impressions had no framework to survive. They existed in the moment, and then they dissolved. Once adults begin narrating children's past experiences, remember when we went to the park, remember when you fell, memory formation improves dramatically. Language gives memory a skeleton. Without it, experience is water with no container. Psychologist Chi Wang at Cornell found that the age of your earliest memory varies by culture. In Western cultures, earliest memories start around age 3.5. Among the Maori of New Zealand, whose storytelling tradition is extraordinary, first memories reach back to age 2.5. In some East Asian cultures, they start closer to age 4. Someone else's storytelling habits literally determine the edge of your existence. The culture you were born into shaped how far back you can reach. So here's what actually happened in those first years of your life. Your hippocampus wasn't ready to store long-term memories, and when it finally started to try, the flood of new neurons tore through the circuits holding them. You had no concept of self to anchor experiences to, and you had no language to give those experiences a shape that could survive. It wasn't one thing, it was everything, all at once. There is a person who saw the world for the first time through your eyes, who felt cold air on their skin and didn't know what cold was, who heard a voice and didn't know what love was yet, but already needed it, who lived the entire opening chapter of your story with full intensity and left no record behind. That person lived inside your body. That person was you, and that person is gone. Not because the story wasn't real, not because the moments didn't matter, but because the brain that held them became something else, neuron by neuron, room by room, until the person who remembered became the person you are now. You didn't lose your memories. You became someone who couldn't have them.